Greetings and salutations, everybody. Harry Powell, E. Spencer Kite, friendly neighborhood Spencer Man here with a special edition of the Severe Takeaways. No fights to talk about from Saturday, but we thought we can't leave a Tuesday empty. We want to get on here and talk about things. We do it anyways. Why not record our arguments, interactions, conversations, discussions, what have you? And so in kicking around sort of ideas of what to discuss today, I posited, let's talk about the UFC's special announcement from just before the weekend. I believe it was Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, which ran to about 2:30. We'll get into that. If you're going to do special announcements and breaking news, you have to be on time, guys. It's just the way it goes. Can't tell people turn up at 2 and then they turn up at 2:30 and you're not on there. Anyways, we'll get into that. And so that announcement was the announcement of a number of fights, a number of events, sort of mapping out the 3 pay-per-views coming after February. So the 2 in March, setting the table for the 1 in April. We will get into the actual fights themselves because I think there's some stuff to discuss there. We will get into kind of a disagreement here about the reactions and where it set everybody up. So let's start with Mr. Powell. How are you on this fine day? And what were your thoughts about the reaction to Dana White's special announcement?
I'm well now. I'm actually, I'm slightly excited, more excited than usual, because me and you never disagree on anything. And so the idea, I mean, very rarely do we disagree on things. So the idea that we actually disagree on something is
never do we disagree to this extent.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was my thoughts? Well, my specific thoughts is, one, you've already said, if you say to everyone, I'm going to make a special announcement and it's going to be at 2 p.m. and you turn up at 2:30, that's not great, because not only are you dampening the excitement and the fervor, you're also, like, people may have taken specific time out of their day and carved some time out of their day for something that could be 5-10 minutes, which it was, right? I think it was like a 15-minute thing, whatever. And they may have missed that opportunity and they may have had to go back to work or do this or do the next thing. So if you're going to do something and you say you're going to do something, you have to do that thing, you know, or at least within the parameters with which you've defined. And I think that kind of leads me on to my second point, right? Which is, if you say you're going to give a special announcement, I think you have to give a special announcement. Now,
did he not? Were there not special announcements?
So I think, okay, to me, there weren't special announcements. Now, let me clarify why I say that. The announcement of fights, especially big fights, and let me use Cyril Gagné versus Johnny Bones Jones, we didn't have Twitter klaxons being pushed out saying, oh my God, by the way, these guys are fighting. It was announced in the regular way that fights are announced, and there was a Twitter graphic, and it was put out, and it was, oh yeah, by the way, this fight's happening. Now, we talked about it, and he ran his spiel, which, by the way, Dana White has no idea the fighter's name that he has on his roster. He has fucking no idea who they are. But, like, he ran his promo for John Jones, Cyril Gane, and it was great. It was fine. It ticked all the boxes for me. But I don't think, like, it wasn't, that to me was a special announcement. If we'd have had a special announcement, klaxon, fireballs, everything going off, put your day down at 2 p.m., and he's like, John Jones is coming to fucking heavyweight, boysies, and he's fighting Cyril Gagné. Go on.
Okay, so I was going to say, I want to jump in here. I think that announcement on Friday, I think the way they did that on Friday, and Ariel addressed this on his show last week, we came out of, I don't even think it was the Brazil card. I think it was the first card of the year at the Apex. And Dana just kind of sat there at the dais and said, yeah, we're doing John Jones because it got broken by T-Mobile Arena with the overzealous graphics. And then he mentioned the Leon Edwards fight, and Ariel the next day, or a couple days later on Monday on his program, was like, really, that's how you announce it? And so I think coming out and doing it this way was meant to give it the energy that it duly deserves. So maybe not, we didn't maybe get it for the Jones Gane fight because we already knew it. We didn't really get it for Edwards Usman because we already had it told to us. And so that certainly did diminish the energy and the like excitement of that special announcement. Please continue.
Because I think to me, the main apex of that special announcement was the discussion or the opening of a card, and then we get Israel Adesanya versus Alex Bahia too, right? That's the monster. That's the monster behind all this. And I think there was more mystique around who John Jones was going to fight at heavyweight than there was at the idea of a rematch between Bahia and Izzy. Now, obviously, Bahia in the cage with Jamal Hill and doing the look up and down and the Twitter exchange or Instagram, whatever it was, like that added some spice to the idea that the matchup wasn't going to happen. But quite clearly, we were pretty heavily down the road with Izzy and Alex Bahia for them to have announced and built an event around it. Now, I think the point and the fallout of where we disagree here is I don't think it has anything to do with the fights that were announced or the way that were announced. And actually, I think if Dana had wanted to really keep John Jones, Cyril Gane under wraps, he could have, because he kept Alex Bahia and Izzy under wraps until we did the discussions. And yes, he's not at fault for human error. The UFC are not at fault for human error. We cannot blame the UFC in any way, shape, or form for T-Mobile being overzealous. But if you wanted to keep it under wraps, you just don't fucking tell T-Mobile, right? You just don't give them the graphics. And then when you do the thing and you go and you do the big bluster and the klaxons and the fireballs and the fireworks, then you can fucking send over to the T-Mobile minions and they can whack it on the wall and everyone's grand. Anyway, for me, there was an element of fans being misled, right? This special announcement came after a little exchange, if you will, between Conor McGregor and Tony Ferguson, and there was some conversation about TUF. Conor said that he'd been approached to do TUF and that he was actually interested. Tony said he'd been approached to do TUF and he was actually interested. And generally, again, if you're making a special announcement, that's something that you're planning, right? That's something that's in the works for a little while. And so Conor puts his thing out the day after, or the day, time zones in America and whatever is weird. But like in and around a 24-hour period, Conor says something, Tony says something, and then almost immediately the UFC are like, oh yeah, by the way, we've got a special announcement. And to me, immediately what it felt like was they've leaked the fucking John Jones thing on the T-Mobile wall. We actually can't allow Conor and Tony to fucking break this before us. Let's get something together and put something out there. And so I think fans felt the same, that there was going to be an announcement of TUF between Conor and Tony. But I do think that Graham on the big podcast, and they sort of talked about this a little bit at the end of the big podcast, he made a very, very valid point, which is, I mean, this is Dana 101, right? He has something to say that's nothing to do with what you think it is.
Yeah, you used the word misled, and I wanted to be like, I don't think they were misled, because there wasn't any. It was the old bait and switch. Right. It was the old, you guys are worried, you guys are focused on this thing, and you guys have told yourself that it's X, and I'm just going to slide in here and you're all going to come and look, and it's going to be Y.
But the point of a bait and switch is that you are misleading somebody with something. That's the point of a bait. The bait is that you put something in front of somebody thinking it's something and then you switch.
Right. But the bait was special announcement. So you thinking whatever it is, it leaves you to conjure up whatever idea it is. And I agree with you. I think that is very much part of the fallout of this. A whole whack of people went, we're going to hear what's up with Conor McGregor, and it's going to be Tony Ferguson, and we've wanted this for a while. I'm in. And the UFC was like, this is a perfect opportunity to get all kinds of eyeballs and announce some other stuff.
I think, though, that because to that point, right, you've said that the special announcement was the bait. And like, to me, if you're using the words special announcement as the bait, it actually, I think there has to be some understanding that there's going to be fallout when there's no Conor McGregor at the end. And to me, I think what's happened is, and we're going to talk about the importance of the fights that have been announced anyway, but I think intrinsically in the fans' eyes, because they didn't get something that they thought they were going to get, it's already diminished the fights in their mind immediately. Now, will that be the case in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? No, I don't think so. I think the fact that we have Burns as a co-main event to an Alex Bahia Izzy card is going to be bananas. And Sean said when he read the card out, he was like, that's a fucking fantastic card right there.
Well, this was my point when we sat down to start doing this, was like, I understand all of what you're saying. And to me, if the reaction is, yeah, we got all of that and I'll address that later, and sure, it's probably going to be great, but I'm mad that I didn't get Conor. Really? Really? The thing of all the stuff we got, which isn't just confirmation of a bunch of fights we already knew, because we got the official confirmation that Valentina Shevchenko is defending her title. We got the rest of the rundown and some added fights for UFC 285, including Ian Gary, who we will talk about. We got a bunch of confirmation for 286, which we already had. So 286, the main and co-main, we already had that. Fine, we can move forward. And then we got the whole of UFC 287, as you said, Alex Pereira, Israel Adesanya, Gilbert Burns and Jorge Masvidal, Kevin Holland, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Raul Rojas Jr. and Christian Rodriguez, Rob Font and Adrian Yanez. Terrific main card. And the takeaway and the reaction to it all was, we didn't get Conor. And that to me it's actually quite representative of what I feel and what I read right now when I look at the larger MMA community in terms of online and just reactions to and anticipation for events and things like that. There's this, it feels to me like a malaise when it comes to actual quality fights at times, where it's still just not the thing I wanted. So you got 15 of the 20 Christmas toys that you wanted, and you're mad about the 5 that you didn't get.
So I don't like, I definitely disagree. And like,
okay, let's go.
Maybe I'm putting more stock into this, but what it actually is to me, right, is on your Christmas list, you've put one gift.
Okay.
And your dad's been like, there is one gift under the tree for you. There's one.
See, but they didn't.
No, but they did though, because on one hand, let me go. On one hand, you've got
actually hit the mute button so I don't interrupt you anymore.
Conor and Tony talking. And Conor's been talking a little bit previously about wanting to come back. We've seen some training footage. We've seen him on the bike. We've seen him. And, Conor does a really good job of showing you when he's training, right? Because when he's not training, you see the yacht picture and the holidays and the watches and the this and the, we see his lifestyle. But when he's in the gym, you see him in the gym, right? John Kavanagh was on Ariel recently and said that he'd bet his house that he'd fight this year. Grand. Conor then comes out, says about tough, blah, 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 blah. For you to then, as the UFC say, there's a special announcement, regardless of whether you and I like the fights, don't like the fights. It's not on nobody's wish list. There was no 20 presents on people's wish list. There was one, and it was Conor McGregor. And then the UFC said, we've looked at your wish list, and we've got one present under the tree for you, and we're going to do a special announcement. And then it was what your brother asked for, not what you asked for.
So my counter to that would be that a whole bunch of people went, ooh, the special announcement is going to be the thing that I want. It's going to be the thing that I want. It's going to be the thing that I want. The UFC is under no obligation to deliver you the thing that you want.
100%.
And if you get yourself amped up, I do this. I've spent a lifetime doing this to myself. I've put in for this thing and it's going to come and it's going to be the greatest thing in the world. And then it comes back and it's like 3/5 of that. And I don't appreciate the 3/5 because I look at the 2/5 that aren't there and I go, well, this sucks. I've learned in my old age that the 3/5 are great.
Sure. Go on, finish.
I was just going to say, and I mean, the other part we will discuss here is that if your big hype up and you're big in the year of our Lord 2023, getting gassed up, getting real excited to then get real let down, is Conor McGregor and Tony Ferguson coaching on The Ultimate Fighter. That feels like a real stretch, it feels like a real reversal of position on the Ultimate Fighter from the last, I don't know, decade. And so like it makes it genuinely, and look, we can have the larger scale conversation about the state of fandom and what they enjoy and don't enjoy and things of that nature if we'd like to. But it just like, that's the one you got all of this other stuff and you're disappointed that we didn't get the announcement of the guy that hasn't won a fight in I don't remember how long, and the other guy that hasn't won a fight in I don't remember how long and was savagely knocked out the last time we saw him. Coaching on a show that nobody has cared about for I don't know how long. And so, really?
Yeah, 100%. 100% really, because not only does this, like, to the point, I'm going to just use your analogy of the 3/5 thing. Like, you putting in something, there is an expectation of what you're going to receive, right? And you're right. The UFC is under absolutely no obligation whatsoever to give the fans anything. They could do squash matches from here until the end of the when the wheels fall off, but they actually should be looking to give people what they want.
I agree 100%.
Because that's what will keep the fans coming back and paying the monies, right? And obviously that's what they want. I think the issue and the core crux of this problem is twofold. And the first one is that the UFC were disingenuous. Whether we think the UFC have been disingenuous before, whether we think that they're going to be disingenuous again, whether we know full well that this was a capitalization on some online traffic, it doesn't really matter, because there was internet fervor created. And I think this speaks more to one, the magnetism of one, Conor McGregor. And two, I think this speaks to the magnetism of the generation of excitement and rumor online, right? But it is, I think, a pretty factual representation of who Conor McGregor is to this day in MMA. Conor McGregor has now potentially, if everything's signed and the I's are crossed and the T's and whatever, if Conor McGregor comes out and coaches tough, he could be coaching against my grandmother and everyone watches tough.
100%. It has certainly reaffirmed, if there was ever any question, that from a mass standpoint, he is still the biggest name, the biggest draw, the gravitational pull in the UFC. He is the guy with the tractor beam, Death Star tractor beam,
right,
just bringing you right in.
And I think that this goes to show also where the UFC is in terms of meritocracy or not. Because even in the Dustin Poirier fights, Conor McGregor, until the leg injury and until, I think it was a leg injury twice, right? Like tripped over his own leg or an arm injury, I can't remember.
But he got slapped the first time.
Right. But he was competitive for a minute, and then Poirier caught him. And then the second one, obviously, lands the kick, breaks his leg. What are you going to do? There's a freak accident. No problem.
Absolutely.
And up until then, it was competitive. The first round against Michael Chandler for Tony Ferguson was competitive. I've watched it back a number of times. It was more competitive actually on second and third watch than it was on the first time. And then Michael Chandler, punts his head to space like Space Jam. Fine. These things happen. Thinking about it, looking at the fight, like people have been calling for this to be Conor McGregor's comeback matchup. And I don't see it. To me, this is Donald Cerrone 2.0. Where Agreed. It's a guy, people want that matchup because they want to see Conor get a win. And it's important for Conor and for the UFC that Conor gets a win.
Agreed.
But in the same vein, these guys are nowhere near at the same apex of their career, right? Conor went in against Dustin Poirier and looked competitive until once he got caught, fine, no problem. The other time his leg breaks. Again, there's absolutely fuck all we could do about that. Tony Ferguson against Michael Chandler looked competitive, but was getting caught.
Right.
Tony Ferguson against Charles Oliveira got ran over like a train.
And against Nathan Diaz, he was in there, but they're both in that 36 through 38 range,
right,
where skills are declining.
I would be shocked, and I'll say this now. I would be shocked if these guys sign and they go through tough, and if Tony actually makes it to the dance and he doesn't trip over his production wires or anything mad, Conor doesn't get hit by a car again, like any crazy stuff. I would be shocked if Conor McGregor doesn't absolutely run through Tony Ferguson. And so that also comes to my point about him being this magnanimous mammoth star, is it's people don't care about meritocracy. They don't care about matchups being fair, quote unquote. They care about their guy winning.
100%.
And that is the big reason I think people are pissed off about this announcement. And it's because they care to see their guy win. And when in their hearts and souls, they think that the UFC are about to announce that their guy has a 95% shot of winning, and they're like, oh, we're not going to mention that dude's name, but we're going to give you this other stuff, which has a ton of value, but it doesn't have a ton of value to you because it's not what you were expecting. The fallout is vast. Now, as I said at the start, and I don't know whether I said this after we dropped off or not, when we look at this fucking card.
Yeah, when we look at everything that we got, and we're going to go through it here in a minute, we got some good stuff. There's some really enjoyable things on the horizon. Right. And so I will maybe not acquiesce, but I will allow what you're saying. I will always, like, not in a like you're allowed to think that way.
Thanks, Dad.
I'll accept it in the sense of like, it just doesn't make sense to me. It just never will. And maybe that's because I'm too deeply invested and I'm one of the like 9 people that continue to watch The Ultimate Fighter. Now, granted, it's because I do recaps. And so, there's a monetary investment there for me to pay attention, though I do still enjoy The Ultimate Fighter. But it just felt weird to me in the moment of Friday that we got all of this stuff, a number of really great fights, including one for us with Ian Gary that, is close to home in terms of what we converse about here regularly. He is a prominent figure on this site. And yet the takeaway, per the name of the show, was kind of it's just weird to me. It's not, I came out of that and was like, Jesus, we're in a stretch here, boys. Like 283 was good. 284 next weekend. Really looking forward to it. Now we got some additional things on 285 that I like. 286 in London. They're going to be jumping. And then we got 287. Jesus. We're going to get Gilbert Burns beating the Christ out of Street Jesus. Sign me up. We're going to get Santiago Ponzinibbio and Kevin Holland firing hammers at each other. Let's go.
I don't give a shit about that fight, but
I do, because I want to see Santiago Ponzinibbio punch Kevin Holland into orbit.
I mean, fine. My question, how much attention, how much stock, how much did your internal needle move when Conor and Tony's announcement came out?
Me, 0.
Right. And that's it. Like, that's it. That's the reason I think there's the disconnect. The disconnect is when Tony O'Connor says whatever, internally to you,
so I shouldn't say 0. I will say it was about 2. And the reason is because he posts the old photo from the Tough Gym and says, this is back in the old Tough Gym. I was there that day. It was one of those days that they did a media day. Like, I've been in that gym with Conor, and there is some nostalgia feels of, oh yeah, old Conor when he was getting ready for Mendez and he was still locked in and he was still that guy. And goddamn, was he good then?
Right.
That got me.
That's the difference.
But the idea of him coming back and coaching Tough and facing Tony, like, don't care.
So then that's my point. And I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm just saying it's a personal bias.
Sure.
That you look at Conor and you, like many, you wish Conor was Conor then, because that's what the reminiscing had to you. The things that moved your needle were when you could watch Conor get prepped for Chad Mendes and deal with the issues that he had going in and still go out and perform like that. And still, we still hadn't seen the best from Conor McGregor when he went out and beat Chad Mendes, right? And so there's all this fervor and excitement. And now you see him on the other side of that story arc. It doesn't pique your interest as much. To 99% of fans, it piques their interest more, because what people want is they've seen the rise, they've seen essentially the fall, and the thing that they want to see is the get back, right? I think that's the main storyline in Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira, right? Is can Israel Adesanya defeat the giant again, right? Or never, not again, but can he defeat
for the first time,
right, after 3 losses to him? And so you've combined this story arc of Conor that everyone is desperate to see. There's this online fervor that hasn't moved your needle in the way it's moved theirs. And so when the UFC capitalize on this special announcement thing, they come out and say, Israel Adesanya, who is one of those guys who...
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely polarizing. That fight is a fight. That guy is a guy that people are like, I don't care. There are a group of people that go, I don't care.
Right. And so when you hold Conor McGregor and then you hold Israel Adesanya, especially given the way that the large amount of the populace views the last couple of performances from Israel Adesanya, they're like, what the fuck, man? I thought it was Conor. And so I agree with the stuff that you said about they're not obliged to give you what you want. But I also absolutely empathize with the people that the guy that they are in MMA for predominantly, maybe the guy that brought them into MMA, the guy that they are desperate to see back in MMA, hints at something. The UFC takes that and says, thanks, Conor, love you.
So I'm going to do the thing that some MMA people are going to hate, and I'm going to tie this to professional wrestling. So the Royal Rumble happened on the weekend. And the Royal Rumble every year, what it is, it's a 30-man battle royal. People come out every 5 minutes. Somebody else comes out to the cage, to the ring. Sorry. Every year, there is this debate, this speculation, this, oh my God, who's going to show up? What names that we don't know are going to turn up? And for a good couple of weeks, the internet wrestling community goes all over the gaff with every name possible. Is Jay White going to show up? Is this person? Is that person? All these different names, free agents from other promotions, veterans. Is The Rock going to turn up? What are we going to do? And they get all excited because they convince themselves that it's going to be this. And then the show's great. And none of them fuckers turn up. And they go, well, I'm disappointed I didn't get what I told myself I was going to get. You told yourself. No one told you that was what you were going to get. No one said this is what's going to happen.
This is not quite the same thing, though. Because it's not quite the same.
Is it?
No, okay. It is, because who's Royal Rumble? Is that a WWE thing?
WWE, yes.
Excellent. This shows my depth.
Yes, correct.
If The Rock, let's say, had tweeted out something about Royal Rumble, and then the WWE go, by the way, boysies, we've got a special announcement about Royal Rumble. And the special announcement about Royal Rumble was that this time we are holding it in Anaheim, California. That's what this is like, right? It's not that with not a single shred of...
So where I think you and I disagree, is that connection, right? Yes. It's that connection point of Conor said it. So the UFC's thing must be about Conor. I am too old, have been doing this for too long, have been through too many carnivals and circuses to get fooled by and to convince myself that, well, because A happened and now B is happening, it must be C. Nah, son. A happened. B's happening. It could be fucking any letter in the alphabet. So do not sit here and go, it's going to be C. It's going to be C. It's going to be C.
Sure. Though you're able to do that based on one, you've been able to, for the most part, right? And I know that there's individual differences here, whatever. But for the most part, you've been able to detach yourself from being a fan of specific fighters. You can be a fan of the sport. You can be a fan of a fighting style. You can be a fan of a personality type. But you do a good job, like most of the guys at SevereMMA, and like Shawnee told me at the very start, you have to try and train yourself out of being a fan of an individual fighter because it will cloud your judgment, right? And I agree. You and I and others are not like 99% of the fan base.
Yeah.
And so when the cookie crumbs, right, if there's a gap in the cookie crumbage, and the UFC have noticed a gap and they've just plopped an extra chocolatey bit of cookie crumb, when a fan arrives there, they're going to be like, fuck me, boysies. That's an extra bit of chocolate crumb. And when they take it and they realize it's 90% dark chocolate and it's extremely bitter, they feel like they've
the dark chocolate slander on the Severe Takeaways.
Now, I don't mind dark chocolate, hence why I used the example. But like, I think for the average fan, they have put two bits of information together. But I think, and that's incorrect. That's fine. I'm with you. I'm down. But I do think that the UFC have seen the internet traffic garnered by a Tony and garnered by a Connor talking about Tough.
Oh, sure.
And then they've capitalized. That
100%.
That is disingenuous because they are leading people. They are allowing people to believe what they want to believe. And there's gray.
I don't know if that's yeah, you and I are probably forever philosophically going to disagree on whether that's disingenuous or not.
Welcome to the takeaways, everyone.
I'm allowing you to believe whatever it is that you want to believe. I don't have to confirm or deny your beliefs. They're yours. How about it? Come up with whatever idea you want.
That's fine, but you know what you're going to give, right? And if you know cognizantly, if you are aware that somebody thinks differently to what you're going to allow and you don't correct them until the thing, I'm sorry, that's disingenuous.
So they're supposed to come out and say, we have a special announcement, but it's not Connor and Tony, and 2/3 of the audience doesn't turn up?
So again, right, you're going from one extreme to the other. You can very, very quickly say that we're going to announce something we're going to confirm. You can give a schedule of what's coming. You don't have to give the shit, right? But you can say, here's 285. Here's some stuff for 284. You may already know. Here's some stuff for 287. We're not going to drop a location, blah, blah, blah. People may then still be like, Tony and Connor. Yep, Tony and Connor. But instead of doing here's some air and mist that arises from my dark chocolate cookie crumb here, they're being like, we're going to be silent and we're going to fold our arms and be innocent. And
I think this is one. I think we have found, ladies and gentlemen, the one place where Harry Powell and I will be forever at odds philosophically.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Truthfully, it's nice. We need to be here. We need to be here at times. Yeah. We can't just get along and agree on everything. Indeed. It wouldn't be as fun. That was good.
Great though, aren't they?
I like that. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the Severe Takeaways, Harry Powell, ESK. Let's get into some of these fights because, as you just said, the fights are fucking great, aren't they? And we're just going to go chronologically. So we already had a discussion, yourself, myself, Ian O'Neill, last week in the preview show slot about John Jones and Cyril Gane and the heavyweight division. Please go check that out if you haven't already. Shouts to IO. Confirmed co-main event for UFC 285. Valentina Shevchenko defends her title against Alexa Grasso. I spoke with Valentina Shevchenko towards the end of December, maybe early January, for a piece that ran on UFC.com, sort of checking in with the champ, saying, hey, where have you been? What's the last few months been like? Was there an injury? What's been going on? She was like, no injury, man. I want to fight. I've been waiting to fight. And she was like, it really seems like it's two names. It's Manon Fiorot or Alexa Grasso. And I was like, hate to break it to you, Manon Fiorot has a knee injury. She ain't going to be around to the summer. She's like, I guess it's Alexa Grasso then. And I was like, all right, I agree. Let's put it in writing. And here we are. I love this fight. This is the correct matchup. Alexa Grasso has looked very good since moving up to flyweight. She's on a 4-fight winning streak. This is the UFC doing the thing to me that in many instances they need to do in every division. Next person up. We don't need to keep doing the gauntlet. We don't need to keep running her through Caitlin Chukagian and make sure she can beat Jessica Andrade. Get her in there. She's done enough at this point. Shevchenko wants to go. Grasso is ready. Let's get it. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I'm really happy for Alexa Grasso to have gotten the chance to lose to Valentina Shevchenko. I think you're right. I think she's done enough. I completely agree that more often than not in these divisions, we see these matchups where it's like, oh, here's the number one contender that you have to beat, but we're going to put you here because this person has lost to this person 3 times already. And, here's this fucking churning machine that you'll probably lose to because they're really, really good. They're just not as good as the champion.
It's the talk after the Gilbert Burns mauling of Neil Magny of, great, get him in there with Bilal Muhammad. No.
Sure.
No, don't.
Sure. I like it. I think my initial thoughts Friday when I heard it was, yikes. Alexa Grasso is going to get fucking mauled, because my initial technical takeaways for this are, I think Valentina's more well-rounded. I think Valentina's kick-heavy game is going to be a problem for Grasso, who is predominantly a boxer, a pretty good boxer, but a pretty stand-up, straight boxer. Feet are sort of just past shoulder width, which means leg kicks are going to be available. It's going to be hard to down block if Shevchenko starts to enter into legs. I think she's better in the clinch than Grasso is. And if we get there, we've seen that Valentina Shevchenko on her day is absolutely dominant in the clinch, whether that's trips, whether that's elbows, whether that's tie clinch, knees, the lot. She has the repertoire. Now, if Grasso can counter Shevchenko and be on the outside and work her footwork and be available and frustrate Shevchenko, we can see an interesting fight. I've not looked at any tape. I've not really gone back, but my brain, the computational database,
the initial reaction goes,
oh boy. Yeah.
Same.
And in a way, I actually prefer this to the rematch with Tyler Santos.
Agreed.
Just because, like you say, if Tyler Santos wants to go and get another one, fine. I actually don't have a problem if she doesn't.
Fighting Aaron Blanchfield at the end of February, so let's go.
I mean, that shows you how much I know about the schedules and the things. It's just too many fights. I just don't fucking know. That's what I've got you for.
You also have a day job.
Yeah, there is that. I have
train. And you have multiple jobs. I sit here and am immersed in this 24/7.
Indeed, but I like that fight. Tyler Santos and Aaron Blanchfield is fantastic. And I think with a win there, either one is ripe for a title shot. I mean, maybe we don't push Aaron Blanchfield immediately into a title shot. I think it may be a touch too soon, but whatever. Whoever.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic fight for both of them to see where they are in their career. When we come to it, I'm sure we'll say for Aaron Blanchfield, we're going to find out whether the ceiling is Tyler Santos or not. And so for Alexa Grasso, congratulations. You deserved it. You earned it. Well done. By Lord, I'd prefer this.
Yeah. 2 others I want to touch on UFC 285. Jalen Turner, Dan Hooker. You messaged it to me before I saw it. I don't even think it was part of the special announcement. And my immediate reaction was, I kind of hate it. And you were like, what? What do you mean? And so I clarified with you look, from a violence weight perspective, I adore it, because anybody that has watched my conversation with Dan Hooker knows how I feel about Dan Hooker, and that I adore that man and the violence that he brings each and every time he steps into the octagon. You and I have had some conversations here about Jalen Turner and his developing skills, his developing understanding of his length and his reach and his finishing abilities, 100% finishing rate. So from this is sure going to be exciting, all action, I'm in. I would like to see Jalen Turner not facing Dan Hooker because, one, Dan Hooker is stationed behind him in the rankings, just came back to lightweight, defeated Claudio Puelles. Jalen Turner's on a nice run. And there are some guys ahead of him that I'd really rather see him fight. And for Dan Hooker, there's some guys maybe below him or in that same pack as him that I would rather see him fight than sort of stick a loss on one of these guys. That was my reaction to it. Like, if you wanted to give me Jalen Turner and Mateusz Gamrot, I'd be really interested in that. Or Dan Hooker and Mateusz Gamrot coming off a loss to Beneil Dariush, I would be interested in that. I mean, somebody's got to coax Michael Chandler into a fight. Somebody has to convince that dude to fight. We've got Fiziv and Gaethje coming up. What's that?
Arman Tsarukyan.
Arman Tsarukyan is trying very, very hard and has been for a number of months to coax one of those men ahead of him in the rankings to sign up for a fight. So that was my only sort of pushback or pull away from that fight. But from a like, oh, good Lord, is this going to be fun? Yeah, it's going to be fun. And we're going to find out real quickly where Jalen Turner stands in this division, because Dan Hooker doesn't go away easy. He's not a guy that gets beat by scrubs. We know that. We've seen that. So let's find out where the tarantula's at.
So I fucking love this fight.
I know you do.
And I love this fight, aside from the violence weight stuff, right? Aside from that, I just think it's the right fight. Like, I think it's the right fight because Jalen Turner versus a Michael Chandler, I don't need to see that right now. It feels like Jalen Turner's last fight is Brad Riddell, right? Good fighter, good outside the top 15 test. The guy before that, Jamie Malarkey, same. Gritty, durable, can do a bit of the boxing.
And
fine.
was the underdog against Jamie Malarkey.
And it was the underdog. Uros Medic, again, good fighter. Not a solid, like, 15 outside the 15 guy, just a little bit less than that. Brock Weaver, again, way down the pecking order. Fine, no problem. I don't think you go from Brad Riddell
Agreed
to Michael Chandler.
Can I interest you in a Renato Moicano?
Yes, but to me, Renato Moicano and Dan Hooker are the same level of fighter right now. And that's that we've seen from Dan Hooker that you put him against a Justin Gaethje, a Dustin Poirier, a Michael Chandler, a
Paul Felder when Felder was active,
a Conor McGregor, right? That would have been a great fight for Conor McGregor as Dan Hooker, right? Like that sort of level, we're expecting Dan Hooker to lose. And it's not because Dan Hooker is not a fantastic fighter, but it's because he's not an elite fighter.
Right.
Those guys in that conversation, maybe not Conor McGregor, we'd have to find out, but they are elite fighters. And so to me, this is the Neil Magny. If he goes in and he absolutely fucking smokes Dan Hooker, if you want to run Michael Chandler the same day.
So this is Shavkat Rakhmonov fighting Neil Magny to get to Jeff Neal.
Exactly what it is.
Right.
The other side of what this is to me is if Jalen Turner beats not only Dan Hooker, but the name Dan Hooker, that does massive things for Mr. Turner.
Fair.
And so then if you want to give me Mateusz Gamrot, because we know Mateusz Gamrot is a fucking savage. If you want to give me that fight after, all right, motherfucker, I'm in. Sign me. I'll sign for him. No bother. Like, I am happy to see the brakes being taken off Jalen Turner with a dominant win here against Dan Hooker.
I also would have been fine with Jalen Turner getting the Drew Dober fight. I know Drew Dober called him out and Jalen right away kind of posted the like, yeah, all right, let's go.
I'm also happy for that fight. Like, if you'd have given me Renato Moicano, Drew Dober, Dan Hooker, I'm fine with any of those three because to me, they're the same sort of
grouping of veteran established. All right, you've convinced me. The other fight on...
Go on, sorry, go on.
No, what were you going to say?
All I was going to say is, of those three names, who's the biggest name? The biggest name is Dan fucking Hooker.
True. Yeah, he gets the biggest fish out of that. The other fight on this card, obviously, that I want to touch on is Ian Gary taking on Song Kinen. We saw Ian Gary afterwards. So originally when Dana White announced it, he just said, we have Ian Gary on the card, no opponent. We heard very soon after, I believe Ian Gary posted on his Instagram or Twitter. You guys know that I want Brian Barberina. That's not what's happening here. It's Song Kinen. And for me, it kind of just feels a little bit like a throwaway. It kind of just feels a little bit. And so if you want to argue and you want to make the case, and I'm not saying that as a like knock on Ian Gary, if you want to make the case that he hasn't fought in several months now, right? Hasn't fought since July last year, had baby, is figuring out his training situation, all of those things. And so we come back and we knock off a little bit of the rust. We face a guy that's got some pop, but hasn't really ascended too far beyond the middle of the pack. Fine. Let's do Bam Bam or someone similar next. But this one feels closer to Gabriel Green and Darian Weeks than where I wanted him to be to start 2023.
For me, I have no problem with this fight. Would I have preferred a slightly bigger test? Yes. Would I have taken Brian Barberena had it been the name? Yeah, sure. It's a huge test. Fantastic test. For me, this feels like Ian Garry is 25 years of age. I got no problem waiting. Zero. We said on the something show, maybe the roundup of the year, we said for Ian Garry, we'd like 3 fights.
Right.
We would like a regular quote unquote fight. Then we'd like the next test. And if he runs through those 2 tests, let's give him a little spice, just a bit of seasoning on that chicken breast. Right. And then we'll see where we go. To me, Song Kenan is a fine matchup. If Ian goes out, and I'll just preface this with one thing. Against Gabe Green, we saw Ian try new stuff, right? We saw him try and do the grappling things. We saw him try and mix things up and change ranges and do all that stuff. If this is another one of those where Ian wants to go out and just try some shit, I absolutely have no problem with it whatsoever. If he then goes into the Brian Barberena fight and smokes Brian Barberena, okay, motherfucker, here's Vicente Luque. Have some fun, right? Let's see it. Let's have some fucking fun. But if he goes out against Song Kenan, does whatever he does, and maybe it's Bam Bam next if the stars align, and we struggle a bit, and there's just a little bit of something here, again, he'll be 25 years of age.
And that to me is where I would have preferred, let's do a little bit more of a step up here, because we've still got lots of time to reset. So if Bam Bam is a bridge too far, fine, then we reset. Then we do Song Kenan after that. We do someone of that grouping after that to reset things, because we still got bushels of time. But I also don't want to be spending 3 years facing dudes that Ian Garry is absolutely going to beat.
Yes.
100%. At some point, we have to see push. We have to see challenged. And so he wanted it. Bam Bam wanted it. Feels kind of like and I mean, look, what gets said on the internet, what gets said on Twitter isn't always entirely factual, isn't entirely representative of what's being done, because clearly this is the fight that came together and he signed on the dotted line and away we go. Just would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a step up.
I also just think, if I could just posit one last thought.
Of course.
Is whether we like it or not, if you go in and you beat Song Kenan and we do it this way, and then he goes in and gets a win over Bam Bam, 12-0 looks a lot better than 11-1.
Agreed.
And so even for your average MMA fan, if you can bill a guy as undefeated, that means much more. And I also don't
absolutely
many of the MMA populace really give Brian Barberena the respect that he deserves, because he doesn't necessarily look the part. He doesn't necessarily talk the way that they want him to talk. But when you go and watch him fight, you know he's good. And so if you go in as your Ian Garry, you know what Brian Barberena is, right? And why not take that fight with another 4 or 5 months training under your belt? Sure. Like you said, ton of variables in his personal life, ton of variables that take a lot of adjustment in your personal life. And so I have no problem. If he was 29, I'd be having a different conversation with you.
Fair.
But as he's 25 years of age, I have no problem with this is going to be his 4th UFC fight. I've got no problem with the slow build. No problem.
Do we know where Ian Garry's training right now?
We don't. His topology says Killcliff. I don't know whether he is still there. I thought there was some rumors that he moved back to Ireland. I know he was with Team Renegade for a little while in Birmingham. I have absolutely no idea where he is.
I'd like to get that answered at some point here in the next couple of weeks, just to be able to get a sense of where this camp is taking place, who he's working with, who has been guiding and helping instruct him. We moved to UFC 286. We didn't really get anything new. We got confirmation of Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman, which we already knew. The one I want to touch on and the one I want to ask you about is the co-main event. Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev. This is a fight. When I talked to Fiziev before Rafael Dos Anjos, he was like, look, I'm going to beat this guy. And then all these dudes in the top 5 are still going to be avoiding me because they don't want to fight me. They find excuses. Well, look, the guy that likes to go out there and just swing hammers and throw massive kicks and just get into a dust up signed on the dotted line. Your reaction to this being official and to these two lunatics sharing the octagon is what?
Wonderful. Wonderful. I think that off the bat, the more technical fighter is Rafael Fiziev. I think that Gaethje thinking it's going to be hard for Gaethje to get up in close and land those leg kicks. I think that we've seen Fiziev do the matrix lean. We've seen Fiziev check leg kicks and use sweeps and all this sort of stuff to off-balance his opponents when they're being too reckless. I think Fiziev throws the better straight punches. But we've also seen Fiziev be an absolute fucking nutcase.
Right. Walk on to a spinning back fist in his UFC debut.
Right. I do think that this being 3 rounds favors Fiziev, and I think it favors Fiziev because if Gaethje drags you into the trenches in those 3 rounds, he has all the grit and he's got a bigger spade to dig deep than most of the fighters in that 155-pound division. I think the only person we can start talking about is Dustin Poirier for having an equal spade, and then that's where technique really starts to overcome. I don't know that Fiziev has that spade, and frankly, I don't really want to know. I don't think I'd like not to know, but I do think it's going to be a war because Justin Gaethje will probably make it one, and I think 3 rounds favors Fiziev, but Fiziev has to start fast here. He has to start fast, and he has to put a pace on Justin Gaethje, because if he doesn't, boy, oh boy, is it going to be a long 3 rounds. Fantastic fight. Loads of fun.
Terrific fight. It is the thing for the longest time, and Shawnee rightfully so was pointing out those guys are in the way. They're just kind of hanging out. They want to win one over each other and then move forward. This feels like Gaethje's recognition, or his team's recognition, of we got to do more than just sit here and wait to fight Michael Chandler or Dustin Poirier to get what we want. Let's go beat this guy that is just charging. Let's go beat this dude that we think we can beat, that's going to get into a real dust up with us. Let's go beat him. And then we can, because if you beat Fiziev, then I'll hear your argument. I will hear your case. You may still need one more. There may be a guy like, the winner of Charlie Olives and Beneil Dariush in there that you got to beat, but you at least have a stronger argument for I should be in that mix. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm down.
We move to UFC 187. We'll start for me with the co-main event. Gilbert Burns, Jorge Masvidal. Your thoughts when it was announced, when it was put that this is not only that it's the co-main event, but Gilbert Burns is making a very speedy turnaround, a 3-month turnaround. Jorge Masvidal is coming back. Thoughts, impressions, early ideas of how the fight plays out.
Yikes was my early. Like, this is going to look very similar to the Neil Magny fight. Very similar. I would be shocked if Gilbert didn't just go in there and run him over in a round or maybe 2 rounds. Like, there is one thing I will give Jorge Masvidal, and that is his defensive grappling, his understanding of positions when he's in a bad position, and his ability to keep himself safe is really,
excellent.
really, really good. You do not
Like
have
long-term people weren't paying attention and understood how good it was even back in the Strike Force days.
yes. You don't have Damian Maya on your back and survive if you don't know what's going on, right?
Right.
There is a very, very different proposition than Damian Maya in Gilbert Burns. He hits like a truck. He can take a shot. We saw in the Khamzat Chimaev fight that he can take a shot, and he can do the grappling just as well as Damian Maya. But it's a very, very different style.
Right.
And
It's
for me,
it's a more power. It's a more
athletic.
smash athletic. Yeah. Damian Maya's finesse and technique and
Right.
methodical.
Right.
Gilbert Burns is, I'm going to take my spot and I'm going to get this thing that I want and I'm going to get it now.
Yeah. And yeah, I think I do think that some of this is the UFC repaying Gilbert Burns for the Khamzat Chimaev performance. I really do. I think
it's both the Khamzat Chimaev performance and fighting backwards against a guy like Neil Magny, who was coming off a loss. Now, granted, they're both coming off losses, but those two losses are not quite the same. And so I think this is, all right, you asked. He needs to fight. Yep, here we go. And like Masvidal has to sign. The UFC can't just force him to be in there. But yeah, I think this is, all right, it's the one you wanted. Here.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like there's a behind closed doors credit system with the UFC. And that's that, yeah, they don't pay fighters enough. And yeah, there's medical bills and there's no insurance and there's no this and there's no that. But if you go out there and you put on a performance like you do against Khamzat Chimaev, and okay, you lose, but it was an absolutely unbelievable fight to watch. Dana doesn't forget that type of thing.
Right.
Sean and Mick don't forget those types of things. And you are rewarded for those things. I
Correct.
feel like the Neil Magny performance was, we're going to give you a guy who does all of the things that you do way worse than you do. And it's not Shavkat Rakhmonov. It's not this guy that nobody's heard of. It's a guy that you can go out there, highlight reel. And then we're now going to give you a matchup on a co-main event of an absolutely monster card with another dude who you can just truck. Like, I think that's what it is. And the side of this also is Gilbert Burns is a top 3 fighter at welterweight, right? He really is.
Yeah.
Ian Gary saying in his last interview, he was like, I train with that guy. Tell me something he does wrong. He just doesn't. He hits like a truck. He's really quick. He's really strong. His grappling's amazing. And you can't fucking finish him. And so he's a fucking top 3 fighter. And you go, and there's not many guys that he's not going to beat, but this is certainly a more one-sided fight than it could have been.
I tend to agree. We move to the main event. Alex Pereira, Israel Adesanya. Part 2 in the UFC, part 4 overall. David has looked at Goliath thrice, and thrice Goliath has been like, go away, you pesky little ant. Does anything change?
I don't know, but I'm fucking down to see it. Like,
same. Yeah.
Look,
same.
This isn't moneygun.gif because it's not going to do crazy numbers. Like, it's not going to do crazy pay-per-view buys or whatever, but it's excitement and intrigue.gif.
So, I mean, it's so compelling.
It's amazing. And it's amazing because you look at that fight and for 4 rounds, Israel Adesanya looked great. There was a moment there where Adesanya had Pereira wobbled. Maybe if he'd have unloaded the gas tank, he could have got him out of there. The question that I would love to ask Israel is, in that moment, what was it? What stopped you? Why didn't you pull the trigger? Is there a mental block there? Is that he might catch me? Is that I don't have a ton of time left? I don't want to burn the gas tank. I'm going to get him in the next round. Like, what exactly was it?
Towards the end of the second, right?
Yes. There was like, I don't know, 25 seconds left or something.
And he hits him with the overhand right.
Cracks
clean. And he twists the old jaw and gets a little 6'4" on giraffe legs.
Right. And so what was that? Because we know and we've seen that there is ice cold precision from Israel Adesanya when he hurts a man. And so why wasn't there ice cold precision there? I'd love to know what that variable was.
Same.
And then again, Alex Pereira comes out afterwards and somebody asked him, like, what happened? He was like, I just believe I'll find the shot. I'm like, okay, you crazy bastard. I guess you did find the fucking shot. And guess what? He found the shot, right? He found the shots. There are some questions around the stoppage. Having watched it back again, I actually have no problem with the stoppage now. I think I was caught up a little in the moment, and it's hard not to be caught up in the moment.
Absolutely.
I think Mark Goddard called it perfectly. Israel was hurt. And I have absolutely no issue with not seeing a man go unconscious. And so the question here is, can Israel continue a game plan for another 5 minutes? Because if he can, he wins, right? If he can't, then he gets finished again or he gets beaten again. And for Alex Bahia, does he wait until the 5th round to put the gas on? Does he
put the hammer down? Yeah.
Does he be like, I've finished this cunt twice. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to do it quick this time.
Yeah. Does he come out with a different sense of, it's interesting now that he's, and I say this far into his MMA career because it's not very far, but he's been through 4 rounds with the champ plus 2 minutes. And he's had those 3 other fights. And yep, 2 of them ended relatively quickly. The Sean Strickland one ended first round. But does he come out now and go, all right, well, look, I've seen what this dude can throw at me in every facet. I navigated the wrestling fine. I didn't get destroyed on the ground. And every time we stand there and throw, yeah, he hit me with that once, but I've put him away twice. Why don't we just see what happens if I come out and hammer this big foot down on the gas pedal right out of the chute? Let's see what he does then. Now, there could certainly be the like, look, I got to go slow because I'm 6'4" and I walk around at 220 and I get down to 85 for 6 minutes on a Friday morning. And then I come all the way back up. So I have to meet it out with some moderation. But I mean, oh boy, there's a whole lot of questions that will be asked going into this one, coming out of this one. I'm very interested to see, as a sort of offshoot to this, what happens with Robert Whittaker, who, fight with Paulo Costa was there, not there for next weekend in Perth. He's sort of sitting, biding his time. Does he continue to just hang out? Does he do the backup fighter thing here? Does he get something? Do they get a Costa fight figured out to slide in here as well? But this fight is, as much as we talked last week about Poatan going up and facing Jamal Hill and how much we would absolutely adore that, and that there was truthfully ways to do it next, I'm glad we're getting this one. I'm happy to get this one.
Yeah, I think, and we've said this before, when you defend your title a number of times, I think that there is legitimacy in an immediate rematch. And with Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno, I had no problem with that quadrology. And I think that they're in the same vein with Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards. I got no problem with that running back. I've said this before, there are certainly times when I want an immediate fresh matchup because, it is what it is. Let's move on, whatever. Like if Leon Edwards loses to Kamaru Usman, I don't think we do the quadrology there.
Agreed.
I think just move on and something else happens. But if I am a Poatan and Alex and Israel Adesanya, I have no problem with Poatan being like, yeah, it's fine, dude. I'll beat you for a 4th time, twice in 2 different rule sets. I got no problem. The other interesting variable for me, and again, we're going to see what happens.
In 2 different rule sets.
Yeah, yikes. Is Glover's retired now, right? So it's going to be full coaching attention on Alex Bahia.
Right.
How does that go?
Right.
How does it go when Glover's now 100% dedicated to Alex
helping
Bahia,
you get better at all the things,
the grappling things? That's the main focus here. Main focus here, and one of the main, and I think the same for Israel Adesanya, actually, is for Israel, he had moments there that he should have capitalized better on the grappling situations and didn't. And so how much is the time that he spent off to now? How much of that is going to be focused on, okay, well, there's going to be a moment in these 25 minutes.
When I get to this point, how do I take full advantage?
And For Powhatan, it's going to be, how do we not get here?
Right. How do we avoid this spot?
Or even better, how do we put him there?
Oof. Imagine that big bastard. Top position.
Is
Fire
this
and
going to
ground
be
and
something
pound.
similar? And this is just a variable. This is just a thought. Is this going to be similar as to when Francis Ngannou dumps Gane and people are like, what in the fuck? Because Powhatan, if you're looking and you're I mean, there's nobody in the middleweight division, right? But if you're a guy in the middleweight division who can do a bit of the grappling things,
yeah,
and you're not
one of my 10 fights that I wanted to see this year was Alex Pereira against Roman Dolidze, because Dolidze is the commensurate big burly bastard that can do the grappling things. But if Alex Pereira comes out and has figured out how to do the grappling things, then Jesus.
And that's the thing, right? What's the skill set that needs to be plugged? Where's the grappling things? Because right now it's fucking big, wide open, gaping, whatever. And if I'm Dolidze, I'm like, that's cool. You're a big bastard and you got big long reach, but them hips don't lie, my friend. Come here. And if you're Jack Hermansson, you're going to do the same thing, right? If you're Imavov, if he'd managed to get to that level, it's going to be the same thing. And so if I'm Powhatan, I'm like, well, let me go out. I beat this dude thrice already. I'm going to go and put a statement on this dude now, and then we'll see. We'll see what these guys are saying after that.
Going to be fun. It's going to be, I said coming into the year, and this isn't a patting myself on the back thing so much as just a like confirming my initial hunch. Coming into the year, I said this is going to be a big year. I thought the stars were all aligning. Things were sorting out in a way in various divisions with various athletes, that we were going to have a really remarkable year in terms of high quality fights, big pay-per-view main events, big fight feel. Clearly the UFC is putting a lot of heft into 30-year anniversary. And so it looks like we're going that way. I know there were people that were very disappointed with the special announcement, but I was quite happy. I'm very excited. I hope you one day get your Tony Ferguson, Conor McGregor coaching Tough announcement. And I look forward to none of you watching Tough, because you still won't pay attention, because that's just how it goes. And if you do, I will laugh and laugh and laugh. And I enjoyed disagreeing with you, good sir. This was fun.
I do think that if Conor and Tony watched Tough, like, I have no idea what the numbers are of like viewership and whatever. But I can imagine that they are absolute toilet, right? Like, and I do think if Tony and Conor,
they will draw some extra eyeballs in.
Not just extra. I do think it would be catastrophic if the first episode, because there is a, and I'm not going to go on too much of a tangent because we've already done an hour for what was supposed to be like a 25-minute conversation.
No, we're fine.
Like, I do wonder where Conor is. And what I mean by that is he spoke about fighting Tony before because he's a legend, right? He spoke about Jose Aldo glowingly recently, and rightly so. And to be fair, immediately after the fight, he spoke glowingly about Jose Aldo. In the literal immediacy after the fight, he said, like, I'm really sorry, like, you didn't deserve to go out like that, and I hope one day we can go run it back and we can have a proper fight and whatever. And I think really that is who Conor McGregor is outside of all the bravado and the stuff and the things. But I wonder who McGregor is right now. He's seen the UFC falter a little. He's talked openly about maybe having a fight with Nathan Diaz under his own and their own promotional banner. Whether that happens or not, I think is whatever. He's a multiple-time father. He's a multiple-time business owner. I wonder whether he's going to come back in with the same venom that certain people will like. Now, he's going to be in there, and I think actually, if I was to put money on it, there'll be an element of that venom, but I think the thing that will keep people is they're going to see the depth of knowledge that Conor McGregor actually has as a coach, and I think that's going to be the thing that's captivating. I think they're going to see his wealth of understanding and technical prowess and his ability to actually communicate that to these group of fighters I think that's going to be captivating. And they're going to do mad shit, and Tony's going to be weird, and, you know, it'll be the whole
for
thing.
that to be the case, he talked about in his little post, and we'll wrap on this. In his little post, he said, I was there before, coached my guys to the win, which isn't true. Ryan Hall beat his actual guy, Artem Lobov, to win the season. Connor wasn't there a lot. If you watched that season, it's not like Coach Connor was there every single day in the basketball jersey that said Team McGregor, coaching everybody up. He rolled in, suited and booted, looking sharp, picking fights with Uriah Faber, getting into John matches with Cody Garbrandt, and, you know, talking about the snake in the grass and all of that stuff. I would be fascinated to see actual coach, all the things you're talking about, share that depth of knowledge, share that wealth of experience and insight and understanding that is, for all of the things anybody wants to knock Conor McGregor about, skill-wise, talent-wise, phenomenal fighter, supremely intelligent athlete in terms of doing these things. That part I would be fascinated to see. And then Tony McGregor, his father, Tony Ferguson, putting the boys through the weird workout routines of, you know, the stuff that Bilal Muhammad apes quite well in his videos would be fascinating. How many people would trip over production cords? Good, sir. It's another week. It's another set of takeaways. It's the last one in a while that won't be focused on a fight card, because starting Saturday, we rip off 8 consecutive weeks with UFC events. We start with a late start time, Derek Lewis and Sergey Spivak, originally supposed to happen in South Korea, now happening at the UFC Apex, but starting at an even later time for me. I think that makes it even earlier for you.
Starts at 6 a.m. for us.
Starts at 6 a.m. for you.
So, yeah.
Interesting. So Sunday morning, 6 a.m.?
Something like that, I think, yeah.
Okay.
I'd need to check, but it's a horrific time for Derek Lewis and Sergey Spivak to be.
Oh, see, and I was going to say maybe we just run right into the takeaways.
I mean, maybe. We'll see.
Because I'm going to be up. I'm staying up for this stuff because I'm a lunatic. But then we get into Perth. Then we get into some other big shows. We've got Corey Sandhagen and Marlon Vera coming up. It's going to be a lot of great stuff. Go check out everything that Harry Powell does at BJJ_Harry Powell. Check out all the stuff that the lads from SevereMMA do, whether that be via Instagram, via Twitter, via SevereMMA.com. Check out the Patreon, SevereMMA.com/pints, the best URL in the business. We turn over the calendar 2 days from now, a day from now, when you're hearing this. Well worth your $5. All the stuff you get. Shouts to Graham and Shawnee for episode 400. It's a huge achievement. It's mind-boggling to me to get to 400, to understand how many consecutive weeks that is. It's crazy. Congratulations, boys. Here's to 400 more, as Harry said. For Harry, I'm Spencer. These have been the takeaways. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week.